They threw his canine out of the plane. The SEAL's reaction shocked the entire base. The fog rolled in before dawn, thick and low, the kind that swallowed sound and light until the world itself seemed to vanish. Lieutenant Ryan Cole sat on the edge of his bunk, elbows on his knees, watching the condensation gather and slide down the window pane. Outside, the distant thrum of the Pacific mixed with the muted hum of generators. Coronado's naval amphibious base was waking up, but Ryan felt like he was living inside a photograph, frozen, colorless, still. He reached down without looking, a wet nose pressed against his palm. Ranger. The dog's breathing was slow and steady, a rhythm Ryan had come to depend on. The shepherd's coat shimmered like smoke in the half-light, each muscle coiled beneath the fur, waiting, aware. "Morning, partner," Ryan murmured. His voice sounded rough, unused. Ranger blinked once, amber eyes locking on his. He didn't wag, didn't whine, just watched him, as if studying the weight behind every word. The coffee maker gurgled. Ryan poured himself a cup and stared through the window as the fog thickened over the training grounds. He'd been here 9 years, a SEAL lieutenant whose name carried weight across half a dozen deployments. But the medals on his wall meant nothing now. Not since Clara. She'd been the kind of quiet that filled a room, not drained it. 2 years of hospitals, 2 years of watching her fade. When the end came, Ryan didn't cry. He hadn't cried since. He just kept moving, mission to mission, until the command grounded him for fatigue. He called it survival. The base intercom crackled. "Alpha briefing, room 3. Ranger lifted his head, ears pricked. Ryan sighed and grabbed his jacket. "Guess that's us." In the ready room, the air was thick with stale coffee and gun oil. The men straightened as Commander Hale entered, a mountain of a man with eyes like old steel. A digital map flickered to life behind him. Eastern Europe, the Carpathian Range. "Sit down, gentlemen," Hale said. "We've been tracking a ghost." The screen zoomed in on a photo, a lean man with angular features, pale eyes, and a thin smile. "Victor Drazen," Hale continued. "Ex-Spetsnaz, now a mercenary leader, he's built himself a network across Eastern Europe, black market arms, hired kills, and a reputation for one thing: making enemies disappear. Intel suggests he's planning something big." Ryan's jaw tightened. The name wasn't new. He'd seen it once, buried in a report years ago after a covert strike in Aleppo. His unit had neutralized a compound, one confirmed target, a financier linked to Drazen's operations. Collateral damage was minimal, or so the after-action report said. Hale's tone changed, dropping low. 3 weeks ago, Drazen went off the grid. 2 days later, one of our forward teams in Poland found this. He clicked again. The screen showed a patch of scorched earth, still smoking, surrounded by spent casings and drag marks. "It wasn't a firefight," Hale said. "It was an execution site, and they left this behind." He held up a photo, a black dog tag engraved not with a name, but with a word. Atlas. Ryan froze. It wasn't his tag, but it was close. Atlas had been his call sign during the Syrian operation. Someone wanted him to see it. "Sir," he said slowly, "what's the link to Alpha?" Hale met his eyes. "Drazen's brother ran that compound you took out. His son was inside." The room went silent. Ranger shifted under the table, letting out a low rumble that drew a few uneasy glances. "So this is personal?" Ryan said. Hale nodded. "Personal and precise. Drazen's been studying your file, your habits, your team, and your canine." Ryan's stomach turned cold. He looked down at Ranger. The dog sat perfectly still, watching him as if he already understood. "Sir, permission to relocate Ranger to secure housing until we—" "Denied," Hale interrupted. "He stays with you, You're a team, and that's what Drazen wants to break. We keep the pair together until we have his location." Ranger let out a short, sharp bark, startling the silence. Hale didn't flinch. "See? Even he agrees." The briefing ended in tension. Outside, the fog had thickened to a wall of white. The base looked ghostly, shadows moving behind vapor. Ryan walked Ranger down the tarmac, boots crunching, leash loose in his hand. "You ever feel like the air's holding its breath?" he muttered. Ranger's ears twitched. A helicopter roared to life across the field. As the rotors spun, Ranger suddenly stopped. His hackles rose, a low growl vibrating deep in his chest. Ryan followed his gaze. A figure stood near the hangar, too still, too deliberate. The man wore coveralls, face shadowed beneath a hood. He was watching them. "Hey!" Ryan called out. The man turned and walked away, vanishing into the mist. Ranger barked once, sharp and urgent. Ryan jogged to the spot, but the fog swallowed everything beyond 20 feet. No footprints, no sound, just the faint scent of fuel, and something metallic, chemical. He knelt, running his fingers across the wet concrete. A small object glinted between his boots, a spent casing, polished clean, engraved with a symbol, a wolf's head. Ranger pressed close, nose to the ground, whining softly. Ryan slipped the casing into his pocket. "Yeah," he whispered, eyes narrowing toward the fog. "I see it too." Back in the barracks, the coffee sat untouched. The leash hung on its hook. Ranger lay near the window, his gaze fixed on the fog like it was alive. Ryan sat across from him, cleaning his sidearm by habit, but his mind was elsewhere. He replayed the man's stillness, the tag, the symbol. None of it was random. "Looks like the ghost found us first," he said quietly. Ranger lifted his head, tail still, eyes bright with something between warning and promise. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the ocean, and the fog thickened until even the light disappeared. Somewhere out there, a man with cold grey eyes was watching and planning the first strike. The sun hadn't yet burned through the grey morning fog when the training field came alive. The chill air carried the sound of shouted commands, boots striking asphalt, and the rhythmic thud of rotor blades from the hangars nearby. Lieutenant Ryan Cole jogged across the tarmac with Ranger at his heel, the shepherd moving in perfect sync, head up, ears alert, stride measured. Today was supposed to be routine, a canine confidence course, explosives detection drills, maybe a quick obedience evaluation. Routine. But routine meant nothing to Ranger. He sensed shifts that no radar ever caught. Halfway through the first run, the shepherd stopped dead. His body went rigid, tail straight, head turning toward the far end of the airstrip. A deep, rumbling growl rolled from his chest, a warning, low and primal, the kind that made every handler in range stop what they were doing. Ryan followed his gaze. Beyond the chain-link fence, a C-17 transport idled on the secondary runway. Crew members moved around it, checking cables, shouting over the roar of engines. To anyone else, it looked like another morning flight test. But Ranger wouldn't stop growling. "Easy," Ryan said, resting a hand on the dog's neck. The muscles under his palm were taut as steel. "It's just noise. Settle down." Ranger didn't blink. He stared into the thick air, every fiber of him drawn toward that plane. His growl shifted into a whine, the kind that came from recognition, not fear. Ryan frowned. He'd worked with Ranger long enough to know this wasn't nerves. The dog was reading something human. A scent, maybe, or intent. "Cole!" Sergeant Vega shouted from across the yard, clipboard in hand. "You're up next. Let's move it." Ryan gave Ranger's leash a light tug. "Come on, buddy. Time to work?" The shepherd obeyed, but reluctantly. He kept glancing over his shoulder at the distant aircraft, each turn of his head slower, heavier, like he was leaving something behind. They ran through the rest of the course without flaw. Every jump, every command, flawless execution. But even during the cool-down, Ranger's focus kept drifting. He'd pause, sniff the wind, stare toward the runways again. When they returned to the kennel block, Ryan knelt to unclip the harness. Ranger didn't sit like usual. He stood by the open door, staring out at the low clouds gathering over the ocean. "You're acting strange today," Ryan said quietly. "What are you picking up?" The dog turned his head, eyes catching his for a moment, amber, intense, full of something that looked too much like understanding. Then he barked once, short, sharp, final. Ryan smiled faintly. "You're telling me I'm wrong, huh?" Before he could think. More, his comm unit buzzed. "Lieutenant Cole, report to operations. Now!" He clipped Ranger's leash back and started toward headquarters. The corridors smelled of disinfectant and old paper. In the mission briefing room, Commander Hale stood waiting with his usual grim calm. "Sit down," Hale said. On the table was a folder stamped classified in red. A topographical map of Romania lay beneath it. Ryan took the seat opposite. Ranger lay at his feet, ears perked. Hale folded his arms. "We've got a confirmed lead on Drazen. Satellite imagery places him in the Carpathian Mountains, near an abandoned Cold War facility. The terrain's rough, weather's unstable, but this might be our only window." Ryan's pulse picked up. "Team size?" 4. Hale said. "You, Vega, and 2 from Echo Team. Observation only. No engagement. Understood?" "Understood." "Your K9's coming too," Hale added. "You'll need him for recon. The terrain's riddled with underground channels. He'll see what you can't." Ryan nodded. But the thought of that growl, the one Ranger had given hours earlier, echoed in his mind like thunder that never fades. "When do we leave?" he asked. 0400, Hale said. "Wheels up at dawn." Ryan rose, saluted, and turned for the door. As he reached for the handle, Hale said quietly, "Cole, one more thing." Ryan looked back. Hale's expression softened, barely. "You're good, but Drazen's smarter than you think. Don't underestimate a man who's got nothing left to lose." Outside, the fog had begun to thin. The horizon glowed faintly orange, though the sun was still buried under clouds. Ryan walked Ranger back toward the barracks. "You hear that?" he muttered. "Nothing left to lose. Guess that makes 2 of us." Ranger brushed against his leg, as if in answer. That night, as the base slept, Ryan sat in his small quarters, gear laid out on the bed. Rifle cleaned, jump kit packed, thermal sensors tested. Ranger's harness sat beside his own. He reached for it, tracing the worn leather where the dog's tag hung. Unit K907. Ranger. The room felt smaller than usual, the silence heavier. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant scent of salt and jet fuel. Ranger stood by the window, staring out toward the sea. The fog had lifted just enough to reveal the faint outline of the airfield lights. He gave a low, almost mournful whine, then looked back at Ryan. "What is it?" Ryan whispered. The dog's tail didn't move. His gaze held steady, alert, almost pleading. Ryan smiled tiredly. "We'll be fine, boy. Just another mission." He turned off the light. For a long time, Ranger didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark horizon where the ocean met the sky, where storms gathered unseen. Somewhere out there, beyond the fog, something was coming. And deep in his chest, the shepherd's growl returned, quiet this time, like a storm still too far away to be heard. The rain came sideways, driven by the mountain wind. The forest around them was alive with noise, branches snapping, water hammering down from the canopy. the hiss of wind weaving through the pines. It wasn't the kind of night any man would choose to be out in, but Ryan Cole wasn't the kind to choose comfort. He moved in silence, night vision goggles glowing green against the dark, with Ranger leading the point 5 yards ahead. Their boots sank into mud thick as tar. Behind them, Vega and the 2 men from Echo Team followed close, their breathing loud inside the headsets. The storm masked everything, the sound of their movements, the thump of the helicopter that had dropped them an hour earlier, and whatever else waited in that vast black wilderness. Ranger halted suddenly. His body stiffened, tail low, nose tilted into the wind. Ryan froze. "Talk to me, buddy," he whispered. Ranger turned his head slightly, the rain glinting off his muzzle. Then he moved forward, slow but certain, leading them down a narrow slope toward a ravine, half swallowed by moss and roots. The soil there was different, turned, packed recently. "Cole," Vega murmured. "You sure about this? No sign of thermal?" Ryan crouched beside Ranger. The dog's ears were forward, his breathing shallow. He pressed a gloved hand to the ground, warm. Not from nature. "There's something below us," Ryan said. They moved closer, scanning through the darkness until the beam of Ryan's infrared picked up a shape. A sheet of metal half buried beneath vines and rock, edges rusted but too even to be natural. "A hatch. Looks like an air intake," one of the Echo men said. "No," Ryan replied. "It's a door." He wiped away grime until a keypad blinked faintly underneath, a faint red pulse, still active. Electricity meant occupancy. "Vega, mark the perimeter," Ryan ordered. "Echo, stay on watch. I'm going in closer." Ranger crawled ahead of him, belly to the ground, sniffing the seams of the hatch. He gave a low, short bark, the alert for human scent. Ryan exhaled. "He's in there," he muttered. Before he could radio back to base, the faint hum of power shifted. The keypad light flickered from red to green. A mechanical click echoed under their feet. "Step back," Vega warned. But it was too late. The door shuddered, then creaked open an inch. A rush of stale, warm air burst out, smelling of oil, metal, and something older, something human. Ryan looked down at Ranger. "You ready?" The shepherd's muscles tensed. He let out a short growl and stepped forward. Ryan pushed the door wider, the hinges screaming in protest. The moment the gap opened enough to see inside, the world erupted. A flash, white and blinding, split the darkness. The explosion wasn't massive. It was directional, perfectly engineered. It hit like a hammer from below. Ryan felt the air punched from his lungs as he flew backward, his night vision shattered into static. The sound became a dull roar, replaced by ringing and the taste of dirt. When he opened his eyes, the world was spinning. Vega was yelling something, Echo Team scrambling to cover. Smoke rolled across the clearing. "Ranger!" Ryan shouted, pushing himself up. His voice cracked through the comm. No answer. He staggered towards the hatch. The door was half open, flames licking out from inside, the hinges twisted. He dropped to his knees, coughing through the smoke. "Ranger!" A shape moved inside the haze, a silhouette scrambling, whining. Ranger was still alive. He was clawing toward the light, one paw hooked over the threshold. "Come on, boy, come to me!" Ryan shouted. Ranger tried to leap, but the ground beneath him shifted. A suction roar followed, a reverse pressure blast pulling inward. The dog yelped as his hind legs were dragged back into the dark. Ryan lunged forward, grabbing for the harness, fingers brushing the metal buckle. For a split second, he felt it, the heat of Ranger's body, the pull of his strength. And then it was gone. The door slammed shut with a metallic thud that echoed like a gunshot. The keypad went dark. Ryan pounded his fist against the steel. "No!" The radio crackled. Vega's voice panicked. "Cole, are you hit?" Ryan's breathing came hard, words barely forming. He's inside. They took him. The ground vibrated under their feet. From the distance came a low rumble, engines spinning up. Ryan lifted his head. Through the clearing, lights cut through the fog. A cargo plane rising beyond the ridge, its turbines whining through the rain. He snatched his rifle and ran into the open, staring up as the aircraft gained altitude. Through the storm, a voice echoed, not through the air, but through his comms, hijacked on their encrypted channel. "Lieutenant Cole!" The voice drawled, thick with an Eastern European accent. "I don't want your life. I want your pain." Ryan stopped cold. "Drazen, once you took my blood. Now I take yours." Drazen said, "Not with death. Death is too short. No, I will take what keeps you breathing." Static hissed. Then, faintly, a sound came through, the bark of a dog, muffled, frantic. "Ranger." Ryan's hand shook. "You touch him and I will find you." "Oh, you will," Drazen replied. "That's the point." The connection cut. Above the treetops, the plane banked hard, vanishing into the clouds. The engines faded into the storm until there was nothing left but rain and the whisper of trees. Ryan stood there in the mud, soaked and shaking, eyes locked on the empty sky. The leash still hung from his vest, torn free at the clip. Vega approached slowly. "Cole, we have to move. That thing could blow again." Ryan didn't answer. He was staring at the leash, his fingers tracing the metal clasp still warm from the blast. "He's gone," Vega said quietly. Ryan turned, his voice low, steady, cold. "No, he's not gone. He's alive." "How the hell can you know that?" Ryan's eyes lifted to the clouds, the direction the plane had vanished. "Because if he was dead, I'd feel it." Lightning split the horizon, illuminating the soaked forest. Somewhere above, lost to the storm, Ranger was being carried into the night, alive, terrified, but unbroken. Ryan holstered his rifle, the rain mixing with the blood on his temple. "We're not done," he whispered. "Not even close." The wind howled through the trees as if the mountain itself was breathing. And beneath that sound, in the distance, the faintest echo of a bark carried through the storm. The med bay at Coronado smelled of iodine and steel. Ryan sat on the edge of the cot, shirt torn at the shoulder where shrapnel had grazed him. His body had healed worse wounds, but his mind hadn't. The blast still echoed in his head. The light, the shockwave, the moment Ranger disappeared into the dark. Every time he blinked, he saw it again. The nurse's voice broke through his silence. "You're cleared for duty once the concussion protocol ends, Lieutenant. Maybe take a few days." He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the floor, hands clenched into fists. Across from him, Commander Hale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, the lines in his face deepened by exhaustion. "I've read the report," Hale said. "Your team's exfil was clean. No fatalities. That's the good news." "And the bad?" Ryan asked. "The bad is that you compromised operational protocol chasing a dog into an active blast zone." Ryan's jaw tightened. He's not just a dog. He's a Navy K-9 with 3 confirmed lives saved in combat. He's my partner. Hale's tone sharpened. "And now he's gone. You can't think like a soldier if you're stuck thinking like an owner." Ryan stood. "Permission to speak freely." "Granted." "Sir, I know Drazen's behind this. He planned it, down to the second. That wasn't an ambush. That was bait." Hale exhaled slowly. "You're right. We intercepted chatter that matches his MO, but that doesn't mean we can launch an international pursuit for a dog. You need rest." Ryan looked away, his voice low. "He took my partner. I'm not resting until I get him back." Hale turned to the door. "You're suspended from active field duty until further notice." The words hit like a gunshot. When the door closed behind Hale, the room fell silent, except for the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Ryan stared at the empty cot across from him, the one Ranger had claimed during long deployments. The sheets were smooth now, untouched. Hours later, back in his quarters, Ryan sat in the dark. The base had gone quiet. His computer pinged softly. An email. No sender, no subject line, just a timestamp and an attachment. He clicked it. The screen lit up with static before focusing. Drazen's face filled the frame. Pale eyes, that same thin smile from the file photo. He sat in a leather chair beside a burning fireplace. The camera panned left. Ranger was there. The dog's coat was matted, muzzle strapped, a heavy chain looped around his neck and bolted to the floor. His chest rose and fell fast, but his eyes, those steady amber eyes, were locked on the camera. On Ryan. Drazen leaned forward. "Hello, Lieutenant. I wanted to thank you for the visit. The mountains were cold, but your gift was warm." Ryan's throat tightened. "You son of a—" The man smiled wider. "You remember Aleppo? My son was 16. He was in the compound you turned into ash. He was no soldier, just a boy who thought his father was a hero. You made me watch the footage. You called it a clean strike." Ranger growled faintly off-screen, a chain rattling as he tried to pull free. Drazen didn't flinch. "You took my blood," he said softly. "Now I'll take yours." The video cut to another angle, an open aircraft hangar. Inside, a plane waited on the runway, its engines spinning. Beside it, a steel cage. "In 48 hours," Drazen continued, "this dog will be thrown from 25,000 feet without a chute. You'll get the recording. You'll get to feel what I felt." The feed cut to black. Ryan sat frozen, his chest heavy. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Then his hand slammed against the desk, sending the coffee mug crashing to the floor. He grabbed his jacket and stormed through the corridors toward the command office. The night duty officer tried to stop him. "Sir, Commander Hale's in a meeting." "Not anymore, he isn't." Ryan shoved the door open. Hale looked up from the table, where a few senior officers sat reviewing mission files. The room fell silent. Ryan threw the tablet onto the table. "Play it." Hale's expression shifted as the footage rolled. When it ended, he rubbed a hand across his jaw. "Jesus Christ!" "We can track the signal," Ryan said quickly. "He's in the northern corridor. That airfield looked Soviet-era, maybe Oradia, maybe Poprad. We have contacts there. We can move tonight." "Out of the question," Hale said. "Sir, he's going to kill Ranger in 48 hours. "You think I don't care?" "I do. But we have orders. Drazen's location is in hostile airspace. We can't act without authorization from NATO command." Ryan stepped closer, his voice rising. "Then authorize it. You know what he's capable of. He's baiting us." "And you're taking it," Hale said sharply. "You're too close to this." Ryan's hands trembled at his sides. "He's more than a dog, sir. He's my partner. He saved me when I had nothing left. If you were out there, he'd do the same for you." For a moment, something flickered in Hale's eyes. Guilt, maybe. But it passed. "That's enough, Lieutenant. You're dismissed." Ryan didn't move. "If you won't give me the green light, I'll go. Alone. You step 1 foot off this base without clearance," Hale warned, "and you'll be done. Court-martialed, stripped of your rank." Ryan stared at him. If it means getting him back, then so be it. He turned and walked out. The door shut hard behind him. Outside, the wind off the Pacific was sharp, cutting through the uniform still damp from the storm. Ryan stopped at the edge of the pier where Ranger used to train in the surf. The leash hung from his hand, the tag glinting under the floodlight. K9-007. He could almost see him there, bounding through the waves, fearless and free. But now he was chained, alone, waiting for a rescue that might never come. Ryan closed his eyes, the ocean roaring in his ears. Hale was wrong. This wasn't about sentiment, it was about loyalty, about keeping a promise to the only soul that had never let him down. When he opened his eyes, the decision was already made. He was going after him, with or without permission. The walls of the psychiatric wing were too white, too clean, too silent. Ryan Cole sat on the narrow cot, staring at the crack in the ceiling that formed a line straight down to his chest. His hands trembled, though not from the sedatives they'd tried to give him. It was the stillness, the kind that creeps in when purpose is ripped away. The badge, the rank, the weapon, all gone in a matter of hours. Commander Hale's order had been clear. Cole was to be grounded indefinitely, monitored for psychological evaluation. For his own safety, they said. But Ryan knew what that really meant. Containment, silence. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ranger chained beside that fire, the light glinting off the dog's eyes as he barked into the camera. 48 hours. Less now. A knock came at the door. 3 short taps. Lieutenant Cole. A voice said softly, "Permission to enter." Ryan frowned. "I don't have the authority to grant permission anymore." The door opened anyway. Standing there was Captain Avery Quinn, her flight suit unzipped at the collar, a faint scar running along her jaw, a mark he recognized instantly. "Helmand Province," he said quietly. "Your bird went down in a sandstorm. I pulled you out before the ammo cooked off." Her lips curved into a tight smile. "Good memory. I still owe you for that." Ryan tried to stand, but the guard outside stepped forward. Avery waved him off. "It's fine. I'll handle this." When the door shut behind them, she walked closer, lowering her voice. "I read your file. I saw the footage. The command's calling you unstable, but I don't buy it. I've seen your kind of grief before. It doesn't make you crazy, it makes you dangerous." "I'm not a danger to anyone," Ryan said, "except the man who took my dog." "Then maybe that's the kind of danger we need." He studied her face, unsure. "Why are you here, Captain?" Avery leaned against the table, pulling a folded document from her pocket. "Because I have a C-130 on standby, approved for a high-altitude endurance test. The paperwork's clean. Commander Hale signed it himself, on the condition that I test at a specific altitude and heading." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Romania?" She nodded. "Roughly over the Carpathians. Not an official operation, of course. Just a flight path no one needs to question." He stared at her for a long moment. "Hale can't openly defy NATO command, so he sends you to do it quietly. Let's just say he left a door unlocked," she said. "The rest is up to you." Ryan exhaled slowly. The numbness that had smothered him began to lift, replaced by something sharper. Focus. How long until takeoff? 2 hours. The bird's being fueled now. You're not cleared for gear, so you'll have to make do with what I can pull from the training lockers. Ryan nodded once. "That'll do." As she turned to leave, she paused. "You really think he's still alive?" Ryan looked at her squarely. "If Drazen wanted him dead, he would have done it on camera. He's trying to make me watch. That means I still have time." Avery held his gaze for a moment longer, then gave a short nod. "Then you better move fast." When she left, Ryan sat back on the cot, heart pounding. Hale had given him an opening, small but real. He didn't need orders anymore. He needed faith. He stripped off his hospital clothes and changed into the training fatigues Avery had left behind. Then he reached under the cot, prying open the vent cover with a spoon handle. Inside was a hidden item he'd managed to keep after Syria. A small patch of fabric, worn and torn, embroidered with one word. Ranger. He tucked it into his vest. Minutes later, under cover of darkness, he walked the service corridor towards the hangar. The guards didn't question him. A signature from a flight captain carried more weight than a grounded SEAL's face. The C-130 waited on the tarmac, its engines idling low, rotors slicing through the night air. Rain had begun to fall again, thin and cold. Ivory stood near the ramp, helmet under her arm. "You've got one shot at this," she said. "Weather's ugly and you'll be jumping blind. I can get you within 15 miles of Drazen's last known signal, but after that, you're on your own. That's all I need." Ryan climbed the ramp, gloved hand trailing along the metal as he passed crates strapped tight with cargo netting. Every sound, the hum of hydraulics, the click of his buckle, felt magnified. Inside the cargo bay, Avery secured his gear herself: oxygen tank, altimeter, comms, and the halo chute. Then she held up one last piece of equipment, a tandem harness custom-made for K9 units. The straps were frayed, the metal ring scratched from years of use. "You really plan to use this?" she asked. He nodded. "It's what we trained with. Every jump, he'd ride here." Ivory hesitated, then tightened the strap and clipped it to his chest. "You're insane." "Probably." She gave him a faint smile. "Good luck, Cole." The engines roared to full power as the plane taxied down the runway. Outside, lightning flickered across the horizon, revealing the outline of the storm ahead. Ryan stood by the ramp, helmet on, watching the base lights shrink behind him. The leash hung from his belt, Ranger's tag glinting faintly in the red cabin light. In his ear, the headset crackled. Avery's voice came through, steady. "Altitude 23,000 feet. 2 minutes." He took a breath, steady and deep. The storm outside looked alive, lightning flashing through the clouds like veins of fire. Somewhere beyond that chaos, Ranger was waiting. The ramp lowered, and the wind screamed into the bay. Avery's voice came again. "You don't have to do this." Ryan tightened the harness and stepped to the edge. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." He looked once more at the sky, then jumped. The air hit him like a wall. The world fell away in a rush of noise and gravity, lights vanishing behind him. For the first time in days, he felt alive. And as he dropped into the storm, through the cold, through the dark, he swore he could almost hear it, Ranger's bark echoing somewhere below, guiding him home. The storm over the Smoo Peaks didn't look like weather. It looked like the sky had collapsed. Black cloud stacked on black cloud, lit from inside by sheets of lightning that turned the world into a negative. White mountains, black air, a churning throat of wind. The C-130 bucked and shuddered, metal groaning as if the plane itself were afraid. "Target at 11 o'clock. Same altitude," Captain Avery Quinn said over the headset, voice tight with strain. "He's running dark, no transponder. I have him on eyeballs only." Ryan moved to the open ramp. Wind screamed through the bay, tearing at his gear, trying to push him back. He clipped his static line, tested his oxygen, checked the altimeter. 25,000 feet. Too high for mistakes. He looked into the storm, nothing but black. Then a flicker of lightning carved the sky and left a silhouette where there had been none. A second C-130 a mile ahead, no markings, ramp lowering. Ivory dropped her voice to a whisper that barely cut through the roar. "Ryan, he knows we're here. He's letting us see him." "Good," Ryan said, jaw set. "I need him to." The ramp on Drazen's bird rolled down like a stage curtain. A single harsh spotlight cut through the blizzard and pointed not at Ryan's plane, but straight into the abyss below. An obscene, theatrical beam. Then a figure walked into the light at the threshold, tall, narrow, calm. Drazen. In his hand he held a leash. At the other end of it, fighting the wind with every muscle, was Ranger. The shepherd's paws scrambled for purchase on wet metal. His muzzle was strapped. A short length of chain ran to a harness cinched too tight. He wasn't whimpering. He was barking, furious, relentless, his body saying what his voice could not. I am here. I am not finished. Ryan felt heat surge into the cold, a furnace in his chest. His pulse steadied. The noise around him dropped away until there was only that rectangle of light and the shape inside it. Drazen crouched, said something no one else could hear, and touched Ranger's head with a tenderness that curdled the moment. Then he turned. Even at that distance, Ryan could feel the man's eyes find him across the dark. Drazen lifted 2 fingers in a small, almost respectful salute. "Don't," Ivory said, as if she could stop time with a word. Drazen pushed. For a heartbeat, Ranger hung there, legs bicycling in empty air, the harness twisting. Then gravity took him. He fell into the cone of light until he dropped out of it and was swallowed by the living black below. Ryan didn't count. He didn't think. He stepped into the storm. The wind hit like a wall, flattened him, flipped him. The first second was violence, then training clawed its way up through instinct, arch, spread, stabilize. His body found the belly-to-earth position, air screaming past at 120 miles per hour. Ice crystals sand-blasted his goggles. His altimeter ticked down in a blur. He was a dot in a void with no horizon, no reference, no mercy. "Cole, I've lost visual," Avery said, voice tight and far away. "Repeat, I do not have the dog. You are in the cell of the storm. Lightning every 6 to 8 seconds. Use the flash. 2 degrees left of your current vector. Wind shear will push you right." He angled his shoulders, cut across the wind, forced himself into a shallow dive. Nothing but darkness. He listened for sound that couldn't live here, for a bark that no sane ear would expect to hear at 20,000 feet. His mouth was dry inside the oxygen mask. He whispered to no one, and to the storm. "Talk to me, Ranger." Lightning ripped the sky. For one white-hot frame of time, the cloud became glass. There, below and left, a tumbling shape, small against the endless dark. Not a dot, the right shape. Rear legs drawn, front legs flailing, the harness catching wind and spinning him. He was trying to swim in air. "I've got him," Ryan said, and tore his arms to his sides. He knifed. The numbers climbed on the speed indicator. 150, 180, 200. The air became a physical thing he forced himself through, vibration shaking his teeth, G-forces trying to pry his limbs away. He aimed at the last place Ranger had been, knowing the dog would not be there anymore, knowing he would have moved, pushed by winds Ryan could only guess at. He aimed at a memory lit by lightning and the certainty that had always governed their work. Find him. Hold him. Do not let go. The next flash came closer, a sheet of white that painted a chaos of snow and vapor. And then, closer now, the shepherd again, rolling, terrified, still fighting. Ryan flared his arms, slowed, let the dog fall back toward him, judged the angle, and dropped in behind like a diver closing on a moving wreck. At 12,000 feet, the air thickened, turbulence growing teeth. He felt the gust take him and used it, came in too fast, corrected, closed the last 20 feet. His right glove wouldn't give him the feel he needed. He ripped it off with his teeth. The cold was a blade that went to bone. He didn't reach for fur. He reached for hardware. The tandem harness anchor ring on Ranger's chest was small, whipping erratically. Ryan slowed another fraction, held his breath against the cold burn in his lungs, and grabbed. His fingers closed on metal. For a fraction of a second, the force of their separate falls tried to tear them apart. He locked his elbow, dragged Ranger into his chest, turned his own body between the dog and the wind. The impact shocked them both. Ranger's head hammered Ryan's sternum, his teeth finding cloth. The shepherd snarled once, reflex and panic. Ryan clamped a forearm under the dog's jaw the way he would in a fast water rescue and spoke through chattering teeth into the strap of his mask. "It's me. I've got you. It's me." The dog stilled. Not completely. Enough. 9,000 feet, first clip. His bare hand wouldn't obey. He forced his thumb to open the carabiner gate, found the D-ring on the dog's harness by feel, missed, swore, tried again. It snapped home. The click didn't carry through the wind, but he felt the shock of it in his bones. 7,000. Second clip. The carabiner slipped. He snatched at it, lost it into the storm. One backup left. He didn't look at the altimeter. He could feel the ground coming the way an old diver feels the bottom. He dug for the third clip, throat tight, fingers numb and slow. He smashed metal at metal until it found the slot and bit. 5,000. Third clip. He didn't have one. He had the leash. A stupid thing to bring to war. He looped it around his own chest strap, tied a knot blind, then tied another. The knots were ugly and strong. "Cole, 3,000 and dropping," Avery said, voice an urgent metronome. "You must pull." "Copy," he said and lied. "1 more second." He wrapped himself around Ranger, shoved the dog's head into the hollow of his neck, and turned to present his back to the wind. The cold ate his right hand. He reached with his left, found the handle, and pulled. The canopy punched open with a crack that felt like it broke the sky. The deceleration jerked them hard enough to put stars in his vision. Straps bit into his shoulders. Something in his right arm flashed white pain. They swung under the chute into a bruised purple world, lightning rumbling far above, snow swirling like ash. The storm's floor lay below them, an endless slope of white broken by black rock and the dark snakes of spruce. Ranger trembled against him, body rigid with the leftover terror of freefall. Ryan put his mouth to the dog's ear and said the word that had started everything years ago on a training field in the California sun. "Home." The tremor in Ranger's body changed. The tension didn't leave, but it softened. A small sound came up from his chest. Not a whine, not a growl. An answer. They were not safe. The wind had a plan for them and didn't care about theirs. A cross-gust caught the canopy and shoved them toward a ridge broken with teeth of basalt. Ryan pulled on the toggles, steering for a shallow bowl he read as soft as snow. He had maybe 20 seconds of authority over how this ended. He spent them all. "Cole, I have QRF vectoring to your beacon," Avery said, relief fighting fear in her voice. 2 minutes to your grid if they punch through. Say status." "2 breathing," he said. "1 right hand's gone dumb, dog's conscious, leg position unknown. We're landing." They dropped into the bowl hard. Ryan flared as much as the canopy would give, then took the hit with his own body, turned midair, and rolled with Ranger cradled tight. Snow exploded around them, a white silence swallowing the world. He slid, dug a heel, caught on a buried rock that slammed his spine and wrung his teeth. He didn't move for a count of 3. He listened. Ranger's breath first, fast, hot against his collarbone, then a short, shaky huff. Pain voice, but alive. Ryan peeled back, hands moving over the dog. Harness, chest, spine. When he touched the rear leg, Ranger flinched and let out a raw sound. The angle was wrong. Not a clean break, but a break. "Okay," Ryan said. Breath pluming, voice steady because it had to be. "I know. Stay with me." He slid them both out of the tangle of straps and dragged Ranger into the lee of a rock outcrop that brought them a little less wind. His right hand was purple and heavy, the fingers stubborn as wood. He used the left to unzip the survival pouch, shook out the mylar blanket, wrapped it over the dog and then over himself, skin to fur, trading heat. Above them, the storm grumbled like a giant turning in sleep. Far off, something thumped, rotor blades working too hard to be up there. Avery had found a way. For a long breath, they lay pressed together in a pocket of warmth, too small for the world they had fallen through. Ryan put his forehead to Ranger's and shut his eyes. "You did good," he said, voice barely more than a breath. You held on. The dog licked his jaw once, a quick, practical gesture, and rested his head against Ryan's throat as if to say the same in reverse. Snow drifted around them, soft and deceptive. A gust tore a seam of cloud, and for a moment the storm's light shifted from iron to pewter. Ryan looked down the slope and saw movement where there should have been none. Black shapes cresting the far lip of the bowl, wrong against the white. 4 of them. Not rescue. Drazen hadn't staged a show and walked away. He had walked his men in on a bearing and waited for the bodies. Ryan rolled, put his back to the rock, tucked Ranger tighter with the blanket, and drew his pistol with his left hand. The slide felt unfamiliar that way. He set his feet in the snow, shallow breath clocking in his ears. He had 15 rounds and a promise to keep. "Quinn," he said into the mic, the copper taste of adrenaline finally arriving. "Be advised, I've got company, fast." Her voice came back without hesitation. "Hold, I am bringing the weather with me." He smiled for the first time in days, thin and fierce, and sighted on the first shape breaking the ridge. Lightning rolled again above the smooth peaks, the storm speaking in the old language of pressure and fire. In the hollow below, a man and his dog braced together in the kind of silence that isn't peace, but resolve, and waited for whatever came next. The mountain was no longer a place, it was a force. The storm screamed across the ridges, a white howl that erased sound, distance, and thought. Somewhere inside that madness, 2 figures plummeted through the blizzard, one human, one canine, tethered by a few inches of nylon and a bond that refused to die. Ryan Cole's hand was a block of ice, his fingers bleeding into his glove. The wind stripped everything away except instinct. The harness strap was whipping against his face, Ranger twisting beneath him in a panic, his back legs kicking through the empty air. Ryan reached once, missed, tried again. On the 3rd reach, his bare fingers caught the ring on the dog's harness. The cold bit deep, sharp enough to make him gasp. He could feel the skin split across his knuckles. The blood froze almost instantly, crusting into black shards along the metal. "Hold on, Ranger," he rasped, the words snatched from his mouth by the wind. The altimeter screamed past 4,000 feet. He had seconds. Less. He fumbled for the carabiner clipped to his vest, shoved it toward the ring, but his fingers no longer obeyed him. The right hand was gone, useless, raw meat against steel. He forced his left to take over, guiding the clip into place through sheer will. The gate snapped shut with a sound that felt like salvation. He exhaled a short, ragged laugh that fogged the inside of his visor. "Got you!" Ranger thrashed once, still terrified, then stilled as Ryan pressed his face into the dog's neck, shielding him from the wind. They were connected now, 2 bodies moving as one through the screaming void. 3,000 feet. He found the ripcord with his left hand and pulled. The chute exploded open, jerking them upward so violently that pain detonated through his shoulder. He heard something tear inside, a tendon, a joint, maybe bone, but he didn't care. They were no longer falling. The silence that followed was almost holy. Snowflakes drifted past them in slow motion. The world below was a swirling ocean of white. The wind howled, but beneath it came another sound. Ranger's low, shaky whimper. He was alive. Ryan looked down. "We're not done yet, buddy. Hang tight." The parachute carried them toward a jagged ridge. Too steep. He tugged at the toggles, fighting the wind shear, but the storm had them in its grip. They hit the slope hard. The impact tore through him like an explosion. He felt something crack deep in his chest as they rolled down the incline, snow and rock tearing at their bodies. When they stopped, everything was still. Ryan lay face down, half buried in snow, ears ringing. The taste of blood filled his mouth. He tried to move his right arm and screamed. Nothing responded but pain. He forced himself to roll over. "Ranger!" he coughed, blinking through sleet. The dog lay 10 feet away, tangled in half the parachute. He was breathing fast, his chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. One rear leg was twisted, bent wrong, but his eyes, those bright, unbreakable amber eyes, were locked on Ryan. Hey, look at me, Ryan said, dragging himself through the snow. His right shoulder hung loose, his arm useless. He crawled with his left, every movement a small war. You're okay, I got you. Ranger tried to crawl toward him, but collapsed with a whine. Ryan reached him first. He tore off his glove with his teeth and touched the dog's head, feeling the warmth beneath the icy fur. It's okay, buddy. You did good. We made it. He unbuckled the remaining clips, freeing Ranger from the tangled cords. The leg was clearly broken, clean fracture above the hock. He had no splints, no morphine, no time. Just snow, metal, and will. Ryan looked around. The mountains stretched in every direction, an endless white desert broken by black rock. Above, the clouds still rolled and flashed, but the worst of the storm had passed. He saw a narrow crevice, a dark seam between two boulders. Shelter. All right, Ranger, he whispered. We move. He slipped his left arm under the dog's chest, braced the injured leg against his own body, and lifted. His right arm screamed with agony, but he didn't stop. Step by step, he carried the 90-pound shepherd across the snow and into the crevice. The space was narrow, but deep enough to block the wind. He lowered Ranger onto the ground and tore open his survival pack. From it, he pulled a mylar thermal blanket, a fragile silver sheet that caught the light like fire. He wrapped it around Ranger's body, tucking it tight to trap the heat. The dog shivered, then pressed his nose weakly against Ryan's chest. Yeah, Ryan said, his voice breaking. That's it, stay close. He checked his radio. Nothing. Just static. No signal in the storm shadow. They were on their own. He sat with his back to the rock, pulling Ranger into his lap, the blanket covering them both. The cold crept in from every direction. His body shook uncontrollably, teeth clattering. But he kept talking, because silence would kill faster than frostbite. Hang on, buddy. We jump. We land. We live. Ranger's tail thumped weakly once against the stone. His eyes fluttered, still alert, still fighting. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a strip of torn cloth. Ranger's old unit patch, the one he'd carried since Syria. He tied it around the dog's collar. You're not done yet, soldier. You hear me? The wind moaned through the rocks, carrying the echo of his voice into the night. Minutes turned to hours. Ryan drifted in and out of consciousness, his body sinking into the kind of cold that feels almost warm. Each time he faded, he felt Ranger's breath against his ribs, a soft, steady rhythm. It kept him anchored, kept him human. When dawn finally came, it arrived as a grey glow that seeped through the storm. The snow had stopped. The silence was thick and heavy, broken only by the sound of Ranger's breathing and the faint crackle of ice melting off the rock. Ryan blinked his eyes open and whispered, We made it, Ranger. You and me. The shepherd stirred, his head lifting slightly. He pressed his muzzle against Ryan's chin in quiet acknowledgement. And somewhere above the clouds, a distant hum grew louder, a sound Ryan knew by heart. Helicopter blades. He smiled through cracked lips. Told you we live. Then he passed out with his arms still around his partner, the storm finally surrendering them to the light. The world was white silence, the kind that comes after violence. Ryan woke to the taste of copper and cold air scraping his lungs. His right arm hung uselessly at his side, his shoulder swollen, his fingers blackened with frostbite. The ache was distant, dulled by exhaustion and adrenaline's slow retreat. Beside him, Ranger stirred. The shepherd's breath came shallow but steady, his rear leg splintered with a broken ski pole and duct tape. The mylar blanket shimmered faintly under the weak dawn light. Snow had piled around them during the night, a thin crust over their little refuge. Ryan pushed himself upright, groaning. The storm had passed, leaving a brutal clarity behind. Sky like glass, wind cutting clean through the ridges. Somewhere down the slope, he could hear the faint whine of an engine. He froze. Not rescue. The sound grew louder, a snowmobile climbing fast. Another joined it. 2 engines. Ranger, he whispered. Up. The shepherd tried, whined softly, and shifted his weight forward. His injured leg dragged uselessly behind him, but his eyes burned with the same fierce intelligence that had carried them this far. Ryan crawled to the edge of the rocks, peered down the slope. 2 figures were moving through the snow, black shapes against the white. The lead rider was tall, heavy in the shoulders, his movements deliberate. Drezen. The second man followed with a rifle slung low. Ryan's stomach tightened. Drezen's C-130 must have gone down somewhere nearby, or maybe he'd jumped clear before it hit. Either way, the man was still alive, still hunting. He reached for his pistol, only 3 rounds left. The engines cut. The valley fell silent again. Drezen dismounted slowly, scanning the ridgeline. His voice carried through the thin air. "Ryan Cole." Ryan said nothing. "I know you can hear me." Drezen continued. "You should have stayed dead." The second man, the gunman, moved forward, rifle raised. Drezen followed, every step confident, his tone conversational. "You think you're a hero. You think you fight for something clean. But look around you. What did your loyalty buy? 1 dead unit, 1 crippled animal, 1 broken man hiding in the snow." Ranger's ears twitched at the sound, his body trembling under the effort to stand. Ryan put a hand on his neck. "Easy," he whispered. "Not yet." But Drezen kept talking, his voice closer now, mocking, almost tender. "He should have been put down, you know. That dog. All those years you dragged him from war to war. He was never your partner. He was your leash." That did it. Ranger's body tensed like a bowstring. He let out a low, guttural growl that rumbled through Ryan's bones. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried a note of fury that belonged to something ancient. Ryan tried to hold him. "No, buddy, not now." But the dog moved anyway. It wasn't a leap. It was a charge born of every ounce of loyalty left in him. The snow exploded beneath his paws as he launched out from behind the rocks. His injured leg gave way mid-air, but momentum carried him forward. Drazen's rifleman swung his weapon up too late. Ranger hit him full in the chest, jaws clamping down on his arm. The man screamed, staggered back, and fired wildly into the air. The shot cracked across the mountains like a signal flare. Drezen turned just as Ryan crawled from cover, pistol raised. Ranger released his first target and lunged again, straight at Drezen. The mercenary tried to fire, but the shepherd's teeth found flesh. Drezen's scream split the quiet as Ranger tore into his forearm, dragging him to the ground. Snow turned red. "Ranger!" Ryan shouted. The dog didn't stop. Even with his broken leg, even with blood spraying from his mouth, he held on until Drazen dropped the gun. Only then did he release, stumbling backward, panting hard, his fur streaked with blood that wasn't his. Ryan limped down the slope, gun aimed at Drezen's chest. The man was on his knees, one arm clutched against his body, eyes full of fury. "Do it!" Drezen spat. "Finish it! You've wanted this since Helmand!" Ryan's finger tightened on the trigger. He could feel every memory clawing at him. His unit ambushed, Ranger shot, the men buried because of this man's greed. He could end it here. Quick, simple, just like the desert justice Drezen believed in. But then he looked at Ranger. The dog was standing barely upright, ribs heaving, blood freezing in his fur. And yet he was, watching Ryan, not pleading, not afraid. Just watching, waiting for his handler's command. Ryan lowered the gun. "No," he said. His voice was hoarse but steady. "You don't get that mercy." Drazen blinked, confused. "What?" Ryan stepped closer, eyes cold. "You'll stand trial. That's the difference between you and me." He kicked the fallen rifle aside, yanked Drazen's own zip ties from his vest, and bound his hands. The man cursed, but didn't resist. Ranger limped over and sat beside Ryan, pressing against his leg. Ryan knelt, checked the dog's wounds, and whispered, "You did it, buddy. You brought us home." The radio on Ryan's chest suddenly crackled, static first, then a voice. "Atlas, stand by," came Hale's voice, calm and clear. "We're bringing you home." Ryan closed his eyes. For the first time in days, he let himself breathe. He looked out across the endless white, the rising sun spilling light across the peaks, and put a hand on Ranger's head. The shepherd leaned into it, eyes half closed. "You hear that?" Ryan murmured. "Home." Ranger's tail thumped once against the snow. Behind them, the sound of rotors began to build, slow, powerful, unmistakable. The rescue team was coming. Ryan didn't look back at Drazen. The man was kneeling in the snow, eyes downcast, his empire of violence reduced to silence. As the helicopter descended, Ranger's ears flicked up, catching the familiar sound. Ryan smiled faintly. "That's the sound of justice, partner." And together, in the cold dawn light of the Smoo Peaks, the soldier and his dog waited. Not for glory, not for vengeance, but for the quiet truth they had fought for all along. That loyalty, once given, can outlast even gravity. The world came back to Ryan in fragments, bright lights, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the low hum of machines. For a long time, he wasn't sure if he was still falling. His body felt weightless, detached, as if part of him had never left that storm above the Carpathian peaks. Then came a sound that cut through everything, a faint rhythmic splash, water moving, a soft whine. He forced his eyes open. Across the recovery room's glass wall, he saw Ranger inside a hydrotherapy tank, half submerged, his legs moving clumsily beneath the water's surface. Two veterinary technicians guided him gently, coaxing him forward. His fur was clipped along his side where the surgery scars ran, but his head was held high, eyes sharp. Ryan tried to move, but his right arm refused. He looked down. It was wrapped thickly in gauze from wrist to elbow, the fingers discolored and swollen. He tried to flex them and felt nothing but pins and fire. A nurse appeared beside him, smiling. "You're awake," she said softly. "Welcome back." He blinked. "Where?" "Landstuhl Military Hospital. Germany. You were brought in 2 days ago." 2 days. He turned back toward the tank. "The dog?" "Your K9. Ranger. He's a fighter. Broken femur, frostbite, a few lacerations. But he's stable." Ryan's chest tightened. "Stable," he repeated, like the word itself was a prayer. Days blurred into each other after that. Recovery was its own kind of battle. Physical therapy at dawn, neurological assessments in the afternoon, endless needles and slow progress. He learned to hold a cup again, to close his hand enough to grip a rail. The doctors said the nerve damage was partial. He'd never get full strength back, but he'd learn to adapt. Ranger was healing too. They trained side by side, separated by a pane of glass or sometimes just a few feet. Ryan would work on his grip exercises while Ranger walked the underwater treadmill, muscles trembling but steadying with each day. Whenever the dog stumbled, Ryan found himself whispering encouragement under his breath. "Come on, Ranger. We jump, we land, we live." He wasn't sure who he was saying it for anymore. One morning, Commander Hale showed up without warning. The man's presence filled the room before he spoke. His uniform was pressed, boots spotless, but there was fatigue behind his eyes, a soldier's kind of pride and guilt mixed together. "Cole," Hale said, stepping to the bedside. "You look like hell." Ryan smirked weakly. "You should see the other guy." Hale's mouth twitched. "Drazen's in custody. NATO has him. He'll face charges in The Hague. You'll be debriefed once you're fit to travel." Ryan nodded slowly. "Good. He deserves a trial." Hale studied him for a moment, then reached into his jacket. "Speaking of trials," he said, handing Ryan a folded piece of paper, "there's something I think you've earned." Ryan opened it carefully. It was an official document, stamped and signed. K9 Unit Ranger, Honorable Retirement. Transfer of custody, Master Chief Ryan Cole. He looked up. Hale's voice softened. "He's yours now. Permanently." Ryan didn't speak for a long time. His throat closed up in a way that had nothing to do with the injuries. "Thank you," he managed finally. "Don't thank me," Hale said. "Thank him. The whole damn base has been talking about what he did, about what you both did." As if on cue, the door opened. A corporal led Ranger in, moving carefully on his healing leg. The moment the dog saw Ryan, his pace changed. He forgot the limp, forgot the pain, and bounded forward with an unsteady but unstoppable energy. Ryan barely had time to brace before Ranger's head was in his lap, pressing hard against his chest. The room went quiet. Even Hale looked away for a moment, jaw tight. Ryan buried his face in the dog's fur. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "You made it." Ranger's tail thumped softly against the floor, once, twice, steady as a heartbeat. The next week, the hospital courtyard filled with soldiers and medics as Ryan prepared to leave. The story had already spread. Videos from the rescue team, helmet cams, the radio transcripts. They called him the SEAL who jumped. He hated the title, but he understood it. It wasn't about glory. It was about what people needed to believe, that some things were still worth risking everything for. Hale stood beside him as he adjusted Ranger's harness, one strap modified to fit over the dog's healing leg. "You sure you're ready to walk out?" Hale asked. Ryan gave a small nod. "We've done worse walks." When they stepped into the open, the crowd that had gathered went silent, then slowly rose to their feet. Men and women from every branch, every rank, stood at attention. Some saluted, others just watched quietly, their faces unreadable. Ranger walked beside him, head high, stride awkward but proud. The sun broke through the morning haze, catching the silver of his service tag. Ryan's eyes swept across the rows of uniforms, and for a moment he wasn't in Germany anymore. He was back on that mountain. Snow, wind, the weight of gravity fighting to pull him down. He glanced at Ranger, who looked up at him as if sensing the memory. "Come on, partner," Ryan murmured. "Let's go home." The applause started slowly, one pair of hands clapping somewhere in the back, then another, until it spread like a wave through the crowd. The sound filled the courtyard, echoing off the walls. Hale stood at attention, voice steady but rough, as he called out, "Honor salute!" Every soldier lifted their hand in unison. Ryan stopped in the center of the path, turned slightly, and returned the salute with his good hand. Ranger sat beside him, perfectly still, eyes on the crowd. A journalist later wrote that it was the first time an entire base had saluted both man and dog together. The footage went viral across military channels within hours, clips replayed under a single caption. "He didn't jump for orders. He jumped for loyalty." That night, as the hospital faded behind them and the plane carried them toward the Atlantic, Ryan looked down at Ranger sleeping beside his chair, the soft hum of the engines filling the quiet. He flexed his hand, the one that still barely worked, and laid it on the dog's back. "Back from the edge," he whispered. Ranger stirred, half asleep, and thumped his tail once against Ryan's boot. And for the first time since the fall, Ryan smiled. Not as a soldier who survived, but as a man who finally understood what it meant to come home. The morning mist drifted low across the lake, soft and silver, rising with the slow rhythm of breath. A year had passed since the fall, since the snow, since the jump that changed everything. And now, here in the quiet mountains of Oregon, Ryan Cole finally lived a life measured not in missions, but in mornings. His cabin sat at the edge of a pine forest, overlooking a lake so still it seemed to hold its own secrets. The air was crisp, the kind that woke the lungs and quieted the mind. On the porch, a pair of boots rested beside an old rifle, untouched for months. Beside them lay Ranger. The shepherd's muzzle had turned grey around the edges. His back leg still carried the faint limp of a bone once shattered in the mountains, but his posture was proud, his ears alert. He lay stretched out on the weathered wood, head up, eyes fixed on the water, as if guarding something only he could see. Ryan poured 2 cups of coffee, one steaming, one cooling near the edge of the porch, a habit he couldn't shake. He lowered himself into the chair beside Ranger, feeling the boards creak under his weight. "You still watching, huh?" he murmured, sipping his drink. "Even out here?" Ranger's tail gave a slow, deliberate thump against the porch. Ryan smiled. "Yeah, that's what I thought." The cabin had become a sanctuary for both of them, a place where ghosts came quietly, not as nightmares, but as memories that could finally be faced. Sometimes, at night, Ryan still woke to the phantom roar of engines or the feel of falling through the dark. But then he'd hear the soft sound of Ranger's breathing beside him, steady as a metronome, and the world would right itself again. He'd started helping at a nearby rescue shelter, working with injured and retired military dogs. Word had gotten around about the SEAL who jumped, though Ryan hated the title. He wasn't a hero, and neither was Ranger in the way people thought. They were just survivors, 2 souls stitched back together by the kind of loyalty you can't train. One afternoon, as the sun broke through the clouds, a knock sounded on the porch railing. "Hey, Mr. Cole!" Ryan turned to see a boy of about 10 standing by the fence. He was the neighbor's kid, Eli, freckle-faced, full of endless questions. He came by almost every day after school just to see Ranger. Ryan grinned. "Morning, Eli. You skipping homework again?" "Just taking a break," the boy said quickly, eyes darting to Ranger. "Can I say hi?" "Go ahead. He's all yours." Eli knelt down beside the shepherd, careful and respectful. Ranger lifted his head, sniffed, then leaned forward so the boy could scratch under his collar. "He's the best dog ever," Eli said softly. "Yeah," Ryan said. "He is." They sat there in silence for a while, the boy stroking the old shepherd's fur. Across the lake, a family of ducks moved in a perfect line, the reflection rippling beneath them. Eli finally looked up. Does he ever stop watching like that? He's always staring out there. Ryan's eyes followed the same line, across the still water, to where the sun was breaking through the mist. "Only when the truth is safe," he said quietly. Eli frowned. "What's that mean?" Ryan smiled faintly. "It means some of us keep guard so others don't have to." The boy nodded as if he understood, even if he didn't fully. He gave Ranger one last pat, then ran down the path toward home, calling out a quick goodbye. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Ryan leaned back, resting his hand on Ranger's neck. The dog's fur was warm under his palm. "You did good, old boy," he whispered. "You still are." Ranger blinked slowly, his gaze never leaving the lake. For a moment, Ryan thought he heard something faint, a splash, a voice carried on the wind, or maybe just the echo of memory. He didn't question it. Some things didn't need explaining. He stayed there until the sun dipped low, painting the lake in gold. The world had gone quiet again. No missions, no radios, no orders, just the whisper of wind through pine and the soft rhythm of 2 steady breaths. That night the porch light glowed long after dusk. Ranger lay beside the door, eyes half closed, ears flicking at every sound. And when the wind came down from the hills, carrying the scent of rain and pine, he lifted his head and looked toward the darkness beyond the lake, as if still guarding something sacred. Inside, Ryan sat by the fire, writing in a worn leather notebook. His handwriting was rough, uneven from the damaged hand, but each word was steady. He paused, looking up at the silhouette of the shepherd through the window, then wrote the final line. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the truth. The next morning, the story of their reunion, their recovery, their loyalty, had found its way online again, shared by soldiers, rescue workers, families, and dog lovers across the country. Underneath one of the posts, someone had written, "He's not guarding a man anymore, he's guarding what's left of our faith." As the camera panned over the quiet cabin by the lake, the image froze on Ranger, head lifted, eyes fixed beyond the horizon. And as the screen faded to black, the final words appeared. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the truth. What's your story with a loyal pet? Follow our channel, German Shepherd Stories, and share your own bond of loyalty. Because somewhere out there, another ranger is still watching,